Welcome back, my geeks. Thank you so much for tuning in on this very special, very first episode TV show watch through edition special thing that we're doing now. It's happening. Get used to it. We're here. We're proud.
We're doing it. It's on. It's
Uh,
on.
I am Josh, one of the geeks, and this lovely person to my side here is Amber, who is currently traveling the road to Valon. Amber, do you want to tell them all about your shtick and what you do and where you are and who you are?
Yeah, I'm just a geek in training. I feel like, I mean, people know you. People know Wheel of Time content. I do a lot of that, a lot of sci-fi. Getting some getting some Shogun episodes in though has been very delightful and I'm loving this show. I'm so excited to talk about episode 2. It was so good.
It's so good. So just so you guys know, we're geeking out about the episode. We're about the TV show Shogun right now. For those of you, where are my Japan geeks at? Right, I need you in the comments right now talking about how much you love this show because it's amazing.
It's good.
Go down to the description. You'll find a link for Amber's YouTube channel, as well as a link for our discussion on episode 1. And if you've not seen that yet, pause this, go back and watch that, and then come back and watch this. And also, spoilers for all the way up through episode 2 of Shogun.
Yes.
So make sure you've seen the TV show before you watch this. Otherwise, you'll just be like, huh?
I mean, or if you like living life on the edge, then watch this, I guess.
You speak truth.
We're not as entertaining as some of these characters, though, I have to say. Like the plans within plans within plans. It's like nesting, Russian nesting dolls full of intrigue.
It's so good. It's so and I just kind of review over lesson 1 along that or lesson 1. Episode 1. They keep telling Blackthorn like you have no idea what game you're playing. You don't know how they play. You don't know how they play. And I feel like as the viewer, we're being told, yeah, you have no idea what's going on. You may think you know, but you don't.
It gets more and more like it gets more and more clouded and hazy as time goes on.
It gets deeper and murkier, and I sort of love this. One impression that I had, just catching up with the series, Blackthorn. We mentioned it in the last episode when we were talking about episode 1. We mentioned it on your channel, and he's a very intuitive person, right? And I've noticed that in these moments, in these do or die moments, he's very much a doer. And the biggest impression I had was, people nowadays, we can look at that and say, it's kind of not believable because it's almost superhuman in a way, except that this is what he does for a living. He sails and lives by the sword. So it would make sense that someone like this would develop incredibly sharp instincts, especially when one's neck is on the line.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point because so the beginning of this episode starts out with Tycho's death, and we get a little bit of backstory on that. But when we cut to the Portuguese Catholics, they're discussing what to do with Blackthorn, this issue. And one of the priests says, I don't know if he was a priest or just one of the henchmen, not henchmen, but someone, one of the Portuguese guys.
Henchmen.
Yeah. Henchman of the cloak of Jesus.
That's right.
He says Blackthorn, he's not the type to leave his fate to God. And
yes,
I think they nailed it there, because when Blackthorn shows up, he's still got his sea legs. He's not ready for what he just walked into.
Yeah.
And this episode is where you start to see him planning things and using things to his advantage and becoming involved in this game.
Yes. So there's a scene that I want to discuss particularly because, as you said, we start with the death of of Tycho, and he sets up the five regents, and it's supposed to be able to keep each other in political stalemate, to keep peace, and fast forward to where we're at now in the story, and what we're seeing is that peace is crumbling because Ishido is vying for power and gaining favor with the other lords to oust
Toranaga.
Thank you. My words are there. Well, Toranaga is kind of torn at this point, right? Because on one hand, he's like, no, this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be sneaking around each other. But he's starting to see this tilt, and he's not liking it, and he's not really sure what to do about it. And one of the things he decides he can do is, let's throw a monkey wrench into the whole mix. And he invites Blackthorn into his personal chambers, or not, I guess it's not his personal chamber, but into his audience chamber to interview him and just be like, hi. Now, I think at first he doesn't actually care, right? He doesn't actually care to get any information out of him. I think Toranaga just kind of wants to be like, this'll make him bristle. This'll make him wonder what's going on. It'll pause them, and I need every chance I get to buy into, to buy every second I can.
Yeah.
And the priest comes in, says, I'm going to translate for you. And he's like, oh, great. So you can mistranslate all my words. But what Blackthorn doesn't realize is that Mariko, who is Toranaga's daughter-in-law, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
It all seems like almost someone is intermarried with someone at this point anyways.
Right. And at this point in time, Mariko's husband, who is called Buntaro, we don't really know a lot about him. He's very cold. He's not very feeling. He's a warrior.
You can tell there's not a lot of love lost in this relationship. He's pretty cold. He walks in on Mariko and her son talking, and he's like, you're treating him like a little girl. And he's immediately coming in and trying to tell her what to do. And it also kind of seems like his feathers are a little bit ruffled that she keeps getting invited into these talks. And at one point he thinks like he's being summoned, and it's like, no, actually he wants Mariko. And
I love that scene.
It's an interesting dynamic to play off of, especially, as we go later on. But yeah.
Well, so my thinking here, so as we know, Mariko can speak Portuguese, and presumably when they're speaking English in the show, they're speaking Portuguese. So Blackthorn and this priest are like conversing, and Blackthorn's like super upset that you're just going to mistranslate everything, not knowing that Mariko can speak Portuguese, but the priest knows she can. So I have a question. Okay. Do you think that the priest walked in, saw Mariko, and was like, oh,
shit, yeah,
dang it, now I have to translate this, right?
Okay, so here's the thing. I want to say, on first glance, I think you would see this priest as like, well, he's a holy man. He probably, how inclined is he to walk in and to lie in this situation? And secondly, if he is the type to lie, what exactly is his relationship with Mariko? Does he really see her as a prized student, as a friend, as, one of the shepherds or one of the flocks, the flock to him being a shepherd? But we don't know exactly, as the show goes on, we talk about everyone has three hearts and one heart is what they keep hidden. So I feel like at this point, any person that we meet, there might be an ulterior motive within, and a way that this person could be persuaded or bought or just there's something that everyone wants at this point, whether
Right.
it be riches, whether it be religion. And we don't quite know enough about this priest to know if we can fully trust the way that he's being perceived right off the bat. And I think Mariko, I mean, I'm seeing through her eyes at this point because that's where the relationship is at. And she seems very trusting of him. And it's until the almost, I would say, like the big twist of the episode
The
that we
bombshell.
learn, yeah, through Mariko's eyes, like something shocking, where like everyone's being lied to. So at this point, can you trust the Catholics if you're Mariko? I don't think so. And would he mistranslate on purpose? I don't know. If he seems pretty focused on his proselytizing, so like gaining
Yeah.
Catholics in this region might be his motivation for everything that he's doing. Like we'll just go with that as a guess, a hypothetical here. So if a war happens because we find out that the Catholics are holding back information from the Japanese, he's probably going to get sent out. I mean, he's not going to be invited to stay, I think, if
Yeah.
it turns out that, people have been doing some really backhanded things. So, in an attempt to save the church, save Catholicism, and keep it there in the nation, maybe he would do something like mistranslate. So, I don't know. It's a lot to think about with this
Hmm.
guy.
No, well, and it's very in on brand with the theme of the show, which is you don't know. You
Yes.
just don't know. They're doing such a good job of creating this really tense environment where you just have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
I like they're playing sort of the mysticism of the culture of Japan and Japanese politics very, very well. Um, because
Yeah.
I feel
And
like
I
I
haven't.
understand enough to be invested, but
Mhm.
not enough to like, oh well, obviously that guy's bad. Like,
Right. And I haven't read the book, so I really like I'm speaking as someone who knows nothing about where the story will go. This yeah.
also,
So,
also, also.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So it's interesting. So he starts translating, right? And Blackthorn's like, oh yeah, you're gonna just mistranslate for me, blah 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 blah. And the priest, I think, handles it really, really well. Whether or not he had ulterior motives, he just straight up said, look, I'm here to translate. That's my job. I'm going to do that. He knows that Mariko can speak Portuguese and can understand the exchange. He doesn't tell that to Blackthorn immediately.
Mhm.
Um, Toranaga looks over at Mariko and is like, is this what's happening? And she's like, yep, no, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But I thought the sort of the pièce de résistance there was when the priest says, the Japanese word for enemy is teki. So just point to me and say teki, and he'll know what you
Yeah.
mean. And then he turns around and says, by the way, Toranaga, I've just told him the word for enemy to let him know that he
Right,
can
to
label me as his
signify.
enemy. Like it was so
Yes.
good, such a good
Yes.
scene.
It was great. I loved this episode, all of the translation scenes, especially this first one because we have this really intense moment where it started off where it would go between, Toranaga from the priest to Blackthorn with translations in between everything. And then as it got more intense, the camera just focused on Blackthorn's face and Toranaga's face. And then like the
Yes,
translations were just kind of left aside. But the viewers, you understand it's being translated, but it goes back and forth quicker. And it was
yes.
really nice. Like it was a really fun scene.
This show is doing such a good job at giving you a taste for um, the ceremony of the situation, right? The yes, I'm going to come in, I'm going to kneel down, I'm going to fold my robes in a certain way, and when that should normally take like a minute, rather than wasting all that screen time on it, they do a really good job at editing to show you that, oh yeah, all those things were done. We're just not going to waste time showing it to you, but they were done.
Yeah,
Like
you notice
that
it too
scene
with
with the
like the
translation.
stamping, with the
Yeah.
stamping too. Like everything placed out properly and like it, like they do a lot of good exposition that way where
Yes.
a lot of the times that you're learning about the characters or the situation, a lot of the exposition comes during these quiet moments when they're performing tasks that could be boring if this was shot poorly, it'd be like, okay, what's this guy doing with the stamps? Why is that important? But
Right.
it comes back up later because when at one point he's speaking to the Council of Five and he says, Toranaga, I don't remember the exact words, but he's like, he sees us as bureaucrats, like something we're not
Yeah.
warriors, we're not politicians, we're just like stamping papers. Like, is that how he sees us? And as time goes on, like they're being outmaneuvered by Toranaga, but each member of this political stalemate all has their own plan. So it's
Yes.
like it gets so messy, and I love it. I love it.
It's absolutely beautiful. Which actually, coming into that, Ishido learns that Blackthorn is being interviewed, storms in, which is exactly what Toranaga wanted. And I feel like I said, I feel like initially Toranaga was like, I really don't care. He's just another foreigner, but it's going to ruffle their feathers. So let's bring him in and I'm going to treat him like I care what he has to say.
Mm.
And very quickly learns, maybe there's something here that I need to be paying closer attention to.
Yeah.
His interest is piqued. He's like, it might still be nothing. If there's one theme that they keep going with is that Toranaga is incredibly clever, incredibly cunning. The man always has a scheme within a scheme within a scheme, and nobody really knows what he's planning at any given time. And that's, I think, part of what the other regents are afraid of.
Yeah.
And so Ishido comes in, comes storming in and says, throw this guy in prison. I didn't say you could talk to him. Or
Right.
something like, basically just flexing, like, oh, look at me.
Yeah, like
I'm
what is
Ishido.
this what is this barbarian doing here? What like stating
You
this
insult us
reputable.
all.
Yeah.
You insult
Yeah.
us all. Don't you know you hold an
Mhm.
office of importance? And so Toranaga's like, you just fell right into my trap. But cool, yeah, I'll throw him in jail. And once again, Blackthorn's extreme luck. He meets a priest in jail and learns of some valuable information.
Yeah, this was great. The priest was really great. Again, another segment of exposition where it could have been boring, but they've done it in a really creative way, where we get all of the backstory on Toranaga and his family line being I forget how to say it.
Minuara? Minoa.
Minuara, something something to that effect. Minuwa, I don't know. I don't know. But we learn like how feared he is, and he's coming from this like feared family. And again, like you pointed out, then we learn about it's Macau, the issues in Macau, which this is just
So
delicious.
so what it was, if I understand correctly, it's a series. It's not just Macau, but there's a series of secret bases. Macau being, like, I guess, their biggest one. Japanese soldiers
Mhm.
manning these and fighting for the Portuguese, not for the glory and honor of Japan, but basically they are paid mercenaries, which
Yes, he said
Toranaga
they're
sees.
Ronin there. They're Ronin
Yes,
there.
yeah. Which Toranaga sees as kind of shameful, and also sees as kind of like, wait a minute, why are there Japanese people loyal to someone other than Japan? Like this is not okay. But Blackthorn learns that even bigger than that, the other regents don't know that
Yes.
Japanese people are being employed on these bases to protect Catholic Portuguese supply lines.
Right.
So in
They're
episode
gun
one, when
running
it's
bases.
yeah,
That's gun running bases. And the question is left up in the air if these gun running operations was one of the operations that had been like involved in trying to take out Tycho. So
yes.
like there's so many
Once
like
again, it's
so many
plots within
things.
plots,
Yes.
and it makes me wonder. And this comes to my next question for you. When it talks in episode one, when they talk about and actually in the beginning of episode two, when the Spaniard, when Rodriguez shows these journals to the priests and says, "This guy has murdered, burnt, and killed his way here." Did what was he actually plundering anything other than the Portuguese Catholic supply lines?
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like that's a really good question because I don't feel like we've actually gotten to know the extent of like what the allegations are. He's a barbarian, he's a pirate, he's a killer, like okay, but like
Yep.
what exactly did he do? Like it doesn't
Well, and
Blackthorn doesn't seem to be like the type of guy who's out there just killing innocent women and children. I could be
right,
wrong. There could be a
you
plot
never
reveal,
know.
but
Well,
we'll have
the
to
thing
see.
and I'm pretty sure it's in episode two. If it's in episode three and I'm skipping ahead, I'm sorry. But at one point in time, Blackthorn does explain that he's not a pirate. He does have what is a notice of writ. Is that what it's called? Which
Yeah,
makes him a
from
privateer, not a
yes.
pirate. Now,
He's
what's the
just a
difference?
capitalist. That's it. He's just trying to get paid.
I'm just a man working my way through the galaxy. But so I got the very distinct impression that he was authorized by his home port to burn and pillage their enemies, which in this case
Mhm.
is the Catholic Portuguese. The Catholic Portuguese would very much obviously believe him to be a pirate
Oh yeah.
because he's attacking and killing them. So, it calls into question that whole, are you a pirate? Are you a privateer? Are you a merchant? Like that whole sea voyage, sea battle, on the high seas kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I really loved that sort of aspect of it where they're like, now we've got some layers on Blackthorn. Well, is he a good guy or is he not? I don't know. These bad guys, these people whom we've trusted all this time, are now saying he's a bad guy, but
New
he's
information.
presenting us evidence with saying that they're not really that good. And so now, where he was a really bad guy and these were really good guys, it's kind of like, what? Well, who do we trust? And it's obvious
Yeah.
it's the guy who's bringing us evidence, and they're just kind of like, oh, okay.
And I think too, I mean, Blackthorn makes a pretty strong point when he tells everyone, look, we're at war. My country is at war with them. We are at
Yeah,
war. And it's not just a petty squabble about religion. I mean, it is to an extent, but when there's war happening, how far away from home can you go to the point where like you can still, I guess what I'm trying to say is it
yeah,
doesn't matter how far away from home you are when there's someone there who is an enemy.
yeah.
Like territory doesn't change nationalities and religion. So like it doesn't matter the setting. These are hostile forces, and I have a
Yeah.
feeling anywhere they would have met up, it would have been a problem.
Yeah. Well, and there was even a moment where back in the translation scene where Blackthorn and Toranaga are speaking, and Toranaga's like, "Okay, so you're at war." Yeah, we're at war. Why are you at war? And they're going back and forth, and Toranaga asks a very piercing question, and he says, "So, with all that in mind, what's your intention here?" And he says, to get rid of our common enemy. Like he's trying
Smart.
to tell Toranaga, the Portuguese are your enemies. They are coming to take Japan. Like,
Yeah.
and
What a
Toranaga's like,
bombshell.
right? And
What a
Toranaga's like, okay,
bombshell.
well, what if I'm your enemy? And Blackthorn is like, well, then I'm dead.
Yeah.
And I think there's a very real sort of in this time period, there's a very, very real sort of mentality about death, and it says, he who thinks of his life shall surely die, and he who thinks of his death shall surely live. And so when Blackthorn just basically says, well, if that's the way it is, then I'm going to die, and that's it for me, I'm dead. I think he won a lot of respect with Toranaga in that moment, because he was kind of like, oh, huh, that's a very Japanese thing to say, that's a very Japanese way to be.
Yeah,
Maybe we're not so different after all.
I love the dichotomy of Blackthorn, where on one hand he can be vulgar, and then on the other hand he's saying like these so very poetic
He's such a hothead.
things. Yeah, yeah. It's great though. Like I don't know. All of these characters are so fun. I wanted to ask you who you thought were like the standouts of this episode, because I know last episode that we recorded on my channel, we didn't get to talk about Mariko very much. And I felt like this was a very strong Mariko episode.
This absolutely was. Mariko is definitely a standout. I definitely want to go there because not only is she translator, right? She's kind of there's a scene where Toranaga is with his council, right? He's got
Mhm.
he's there. The ladies are there, which is a really fun scene because
That was
they're very
great.
very informal, very like teasing each other, and
Yeah.
he's got is it Yabushige is his right hand man?
No, Yabushige is the one that
Yabushige
likes
is
to
his little
boil.
underling.
Yeah. He's the
Who's
one who likes to boil people.
yeah? Who's the who's his right
That
hand man?
I would have to look it up. I know last week I had a list of all of the
You
names,
know
but I
what?
know
I
exactly
I,
who
w-
you're talking about.
I was sitting there like I should write down these names. Nah, I won't worry about it. But I'm gonna pull up names now because I need them. Oh, and that's who it. That's who's. It's Mariko's father-in-law.
Father-in-law.
Is
Yes.
Toranaga's
Right
right
hand.
hand man?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
The
I'm pulling it
family
up.
dynamics there are really nice. Like Buntaro, it was really good to get more of him in this episode because it plays out later on. But seeing
Yeah.
how interwoven this family is and their connection to Toranaga, it makes you understand why he's bringing Mariko in, because like this is his right-hand guy. Surely he
Yeah.
can trust his daughter-in-law, and he's putting a lot of faith in her. He's honoring her. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and there's a scene, and I can't find his name, and I'm failing hard now. But there's a scene where we were talking about, we were alluding it to it earlier. Mariko and her son are talking. Buntaro comes in and he's like, "Hey, stop being all fun and happy."
mhm.
His father comes in, Toranaga's right hand man, and says that the Lord Toranaga's called another meeting. Okay, cool, boom. And he goes, no, not you, Mariko, you need to come. and Buntaro gets all butthurt. They sit down in this meeting, and Toranaga is sort of talking about what he wants to do. And I love that this is the first time we get an illustration of how crafty Toranaga is, because he says things without saying them. And you're, as the watcher, as the viewer, I feel like we're going, okay, did he mean this? And you don't really know. And in that moment, his right-hand man is like, why would you do that? And he's just like,
and Mariko.
And then looks over at Mariko, and she's like, he wants to do this, and he wants to do this, and he wants to do this, and this, and this. And then he even says, like, I wish your son was this crafty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Buntaro feels a little bit like a meathead, like, you know what I mean? Like, not the most crafty, not the smartest, sharpest tool in the shed, but he's a warrior, so he's got that going for him.
And at this point in time, really, that's all he's done.
Yeah,
is just kind of be a jerk.
Yeah.
But I love this introduction. That's a word. Introduction into Toranaga's more crafty side, and introducing Mariko is now. I have to go back and I have to go, wow, does Mariko do the same thing? Is she also playing people? Interesting. This is
right.
And so I love that we're building on the suspense. We're building on the mystery. We're building on the mysticism of it all.
Absolutely.
And then following that, right? What do we get? We get
we did. Well, I just wanted to touch on something before we move forward, because I really wanted to talk about Blackthorn being freed. So which is
where I was going. So
okay, good.
Perfect. Go.
Great minds.
Go off, Queen.
So I love how he's resigned. He thinks he's been sent to death. Like, well, this is it. And just, moments ago, he's like, I did not come here to die on a cross. And now he's being let out with the white sheet over his face. And plot twist. So Yabushiga has been bought off by one of the 5 in the stalemate. I don't remember the others' names, but one of the Catholic ones. And Yabushiga has been bought off. So he comes in to like grab Blackthorn, and it gets even more messy, I feel like. But the one of the regents who put this in motion, he couldn't do it himself because he's like, pity, I already sent him to his death. That sucks. And Yabushiga's like, but what if you had someone who could free him without you getting your hands dirty? And so I loved getting this more insight into Yabushiga, because this is a man that can be bought. Like, this is a man that will just look, you offer the right thing, like the right carrot on a stick, and he's your guy. And that makes a very interesting character.
Yes. I love that Toranaga recognizes this. Like, I don't think, with how intelligent Toranaga is, I don't think he doubts for a moment that Yabushiga is not going to be easily swayed.
Yeah.
And they even have this. Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, even when the ship shows up, Yabushiga's like mine. Like, he's gonna try and weasel his way into that and get control of that ship. But Toranaga's number 2 was like, you wouldn't be trying to take this ship away from like our Lord, would you? And he was like, oh, no.
Of course not. It's the moment it touched Japan, they were all his anyway.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I got really excited there.
That's when it's the best, right? When you're all excited about it, you're like, hell yeah, let's go. but I loved especially when all this is happening. He hires bandits to kill the escort. He goes in and kills the bandits. He brings Blackthorn back to Toranaga because he and Ishido had talked and was like, I guess Ishido wanted to keep him alive because it gave him like control over the Christian regents.
It yeah, it gets pretty
Things,
convoluted, yeah, where you don't know
things,
exactly. Look, I've watched
and
this
the.
episode 3 times. 3 times, and I'm still, like, not entirely certain on some things.
Well, and this is where you get to the real like sort of bombshell moment in the episode, which is Blackthorn sits down in front of Tornaga again, only this time no priests, just Mariko as translator, and Blackthorn gets to drop his bombs. He gets to
Yeah.
say, "Hey, here's why we're at war. Here's why I came." And if you think that they're not, and the well, I guess the part that I really loved about it is that Toranaga immediately recognizes this as truth because he can already see the Catholic plays for power in his own home.
Yeah, it's
He can
happening
already
in real
see.
time.
Yeah, he can see these things because he's a very smart, very clever, very crafty leader. And so when he recognizes those political maneuverings, he's like, okay, but why? And but the ambition of controlling all of Japan is something that's so sort of shocking, I think, to him that he
Mhm.
didn't think about that. He was like, no, it's fine. I see them. They're politically maneuvering and having their great time. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That was Tycho's plan. So cool.
Right.
Go for it. Go off. Like, do your thing.
Go
But
off,
when he
yeah.
finds out when he finds out that not only is this not just political maneuvering, this is an actual plot and it's viable,
Mhm.
I feel like we see a change in Toranaga, which Hiroyuki Sanada, like, fantastic actor. You see that change in him just in his face, sitting there listening to Blackthorn talk about this is what's happening, this is what the plan is.
Exactly.
And I feel
It's
like you see a shift at that point.
yeah, definitely. It's almost yeah, I think it's a really good observation about how up until this point Tornaga's like, "Yeah, sure, play games. That's what we're here for. Go ahead." And what's nice is that once we learn about Magellan's Pass and the secret trade route and the
Right.
blockade, and not only do we have this situation in Macau where we've got gun running and Ronin and all of these things that shouldn't be going on, he also says something that I feel like is so utterly shocking when he says, "Look, like the Portuguese aren't just here to get rich, they're here to oust your leaders and install Catholics. Like,
Yeah.
they're here to take your country away from you." And up until that point, I think, like, those were the words that swayed everyone in the room because, like, yeah, gun running and secret bases, okay, that's pretty bad, but now he's saying, like, this is an act of war. This is like a hostile takeover, and you don't even know that it's happening. Like, and I think too, the other thing that is shocking is that even Mariko at this point was like, "Oh shit." Like all of my, all of my strong ties that I have to the Catholic faith at this point, like now all
Yeah.
of that's in jeopardy because like she's just had her eyes peeled wide open. And we don't know yet if she fully believes it. but I think she's got a pretty strong leaning towards, I think this is true. And what I love about this episode is we get this big bombshell, right? And I feel like so often when I'm watching a television show, that would be the end of the episode. It's like plot twist, cliffhanger, like super
Yeah.
formulaic, right?
Tune in
But
next
no,
week for.
but yeah, exactly. But they don't do that. And that's what I really enjoy about the writing on this show, is because it could have very easily become like, and next week on Shogun. Like, they didn't do that. They went ahead and left like this big plot twist in there and then followed it up with an assassin plot afterwards. So it's like you learn, yeah, you learn the new information. Big bomb gets dropped on the lap of everybody involved. And then they could have just left that as it was. But what I think is much more interesting is adding a next step, saying like, okay, so how does that big plot twist affect next? Like, what's the question? What happens because of this information? And they answered it immediately.
Yes.
And the answer
Yes.
was assassin.
Assassino.
Yes.
Well, and Toranaga, once again, showing his
He's so
amazing,
wily. He's so wily.
clever,
I love it.
cunning. Says, you know what? You've had it rough. You can have my room tonight. And Mariko's even like, this is a great honor. Like, you need to treat it like a great honor. I think Mariko sees it. I think at the very least she understands there's a reason for it. I think everybody else is kind of like, I mean, that's a little extreme, don't you think? But okay, you're in charge.
Right.
And it turns out to be quite beneficial.
Yeah, well, it's like he set a trap knowing that there was probably going to be a second, attack on Blackthorn's life. They've been trying to kill him a lot so far. Like
He
they've been
won't die.
Right? He keeps landing somehow on his feet. But this was again like really, really engaging to watch. Like, who doesn't love like an assassin story?
Yeah.
But also just how beautiful that it was shot, because it's also cluing you into the fact that women in this setting were also trained, and women in this setting are also cutthroat. And like we've been
Yes.
looking at a lot of these male
Literally.
players. Yes, yes. Where Mariko is so integral to what's happening to the story, and she's a strong female character in this narrative, but we also have like literal strong women who are assassins, who are just like shanking people left and right, and like slipping through like
she
under
got
the
like
cloak of darkness, 4 or
5
5
bodies
kills.
in one scene.
Yes. And I think
And
like every
I was
corner
just
she
gonna say, I
turned,
also
it was
loved
just
how
like,
it was like the camera was just following her too. There was like no, like it was a one shot. Like she killed like 5 people in one camera take.
good
So
observation.
it was good. Like go back and watch it again, which we will, because
Why not?
we're geeking out right now. That's what we do.
And I loved this like Dexter Morgan like blood bath that gets like this like blood splatter that goes across the
so good. It's so good.
the paper. And I mean, I don't know, like sometimes something like that could be a little bit cheesy, where it almost like it leans a little bit too campy or something. But like, no, it was just like chef's kiss.
So good.
It was great.
It was so good. And then, of course, she eventually gets taken out. She doesn't get Blackthorn. She doesn't get Toranaga. But Toranaga immediately recognizes this as, okay, not only is someone after, and he even explains too, because everybody's like, oh, it's lucky that you weren't in your chambers, and he was like, no, this was on purpose. And they weren't after me. They were after him. And everybody's like, oh no,
What?
what's going on?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in a way, his enemies played their card. He now knows that more than his death, they desire the death of Blackthorn. And he
Mhm.
now knows that Blackthorn is someone who is very important. He now knows Blackthorn is someone who's given him a great deal of good intel and good information
Mhm.
and can provide him with guns and training and money and stuff like that because of all that stuff that's still on his ship. I feel like that's something we've kind of forgotten about, but he's
Yeah.
still got a ship full of money and guns and gunpowder and
Cannons and
yeah.
all of that.
And so you get this sort of sense at the end of the episode that's like, huh. And it very much is just sort of like a plot thickens.
Yeah, it's great. It's really great. I think these two characters, Tornaga and Blackthorn, they're written in such a fun way. I love the moment where Blackthorn, it's in the second translation segment, I believe, where he's like telling Blackthorn, like, look, you can't take on the entire Portuguese nation and the Catholics. You'll die. And Blackthorn's like, unless I win. And
Yeah. Yes.
I feel like Toranaga was like, "Oh, okay." Like he really isn't just rudderless. Like this he has a lot of fight
He,
to him
yes.
and he's again like that moment is such a nice um like counter or I guess another like segment of where we have those priests saying like he's not the type to leave his fate to God and like now Toranaga is also seeing that. So I think the Catholics, their fear of Blackthorn, like, it's founded. I think they
Yeah.
know the type of guy that he is, and now Tornaga is starting to see that, and on this assassin plot, we did have Blackthorn kind of, like, jump in there and, like,
Yeah.
to wrestle the knife away from the assassin, and that might have bought him some points as well. I did love Tornaga's, like, he, like, hits her with the butt of his
Yeah.
sword, I think, and just kind of, like, kicks her, like, out into the garden, and it was such a great, like,
Yeah.
shot.
Which which I know, and I know I gushed over this on our last episode, which reminder, Road to Tarvalon, go watch our episode 1 discussion. But the visuals are just stunning. It so beautifully framed, so beautifully,
Mhm.
the color palettes on these episodes are just beautiful. It's a beautiful show. Even when it's like gritty and dark and kind of gruesome, like we were talking about the maid, assassin maid running around killing people. Like even that had an eerie sense of beauty to it. I mean, she wasn't, desperately, I think a lot of times you think about like the old Japanese movies and people are screaming and she wasn't screaming and running around.
Right.
It was very smooth and eloquent. And she just run through and just real quick, I'm just killing people. That's me just killing people over here. And you're just like, this is, it's eerily beautiful. And I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, you can tell they put a lot into how they wanted things to look in terms of, set design, the way that it's filmed, the lighting, the CGI, because, like, a lot of these skylines aren't real,
Yeah.
obviously. I think they shot it in Canada maybe, but it despite, like, it we're not actually in Japan, like, it looks
Yeah.
very
They did a great
well
job with it.
done. Yeah, I would agree. Like, that kind of foggy, like, just
Mm.
you can almost see the humidity where I'm like, "That's not easy to do."
No, it is not. It they've just, you can tell that care, concern, and happiness and dedication have gone into every single frame of this show. The producers of the show are really, really, really trying their best to do it the most justice that they can. If that makes sense?
Yeah, and I
And
mean I would
honestly,
agree.
yeah, honestly, I was going to say we should find someone who has read the books and get their impression on how it, maybe when we do like a finale wrap up, we
That would
get
be
someone who
good.
has read the books and get their impression on the series as a whole and say, hey, how did it line up? Because as a show, as a viewer of the show, I think, you and I are both really enjoying it. But, for example, I really enjoyed The Witcher. Like, I liked it. It was fun. There were times where it was kind of difficult to keep up with because of all the time skips and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
overall, I was entertained and I enjoyed it. And I heard people absolutely shit on the show because it was not a strong adaptation for the book series. And I was like, oh, I had no idea. And I've had conversations with the Wheel of Time TV show where people who have not read the books watched the TV show and went, wow, that was really great. And I'm watching the show and I'm going, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I think too though, I mean this novel, if I'm correct, is quite a bit older than, like Wheel of Time or
Oh, is it?
Witcher, perhaps. Um, I'd have to double check, but I feel like it's an older novel. You can
Let's
look it
see.
up if you want.
I'm doing it
James
right now.
Lavelle.
Shogun TV
But
show.
like it's just look, there's a lot of angry nerds out there, and I'm not saying that to be mean. I am an angry nerd. I am one of those people too. So I mean,
I
but this is
yeah.
this is an issue that we see so often with adaptations. Like, look within the Star Wars community and, stuff like that. There's always someone out there who is like, this isn't right. They didn't do it how I see that it should have been done. And I'm
Yes.
not getting that sense that with Shogun that there are people out there being like, they're doing it wrong, or they should
Yeah.
have done this. But perhaps it's just because it's a bit older and it doesn't have that like rabid fan base to begin with, where
Maybe.
people are like out on these streets waging war in terms of like
I
Rotten
yeah.
Tomatoes.
And I feel like when it comes to a critique of an adaptation, we're all going to have our emotions in it, right? Especially when it's something that we're emotionally invested in, which leads into your comment about, maybe there's just not a passionate fan base over this one. And so they're able to get away with a lot more creative license. But
Yeah.
there's such a thing as a valid criticism and an invalid criticism. Take that how you want. I too am an angry geek on the internet. Like I get very, very passionate about certain things, which is, why I put my face on the internet talking about things that I'm passionate about. But I always have to try and remove myself a little bit from the situation and go, okay, am I angry because it's bad, or am I angry because it doesn't match my headcanon? And I think there's validity to that, but I have to remember that, hey, guess what? You can have one book and a million different people read that book and get a million different things out of it. The book, I loved what you said in your this has been in my head rent free, and I'm glad I got
Okay.
to bring it up because
Okay.
you had done a review on the Wheel of Time TV show with
Dagger on a stick.
Matt's Dagger on a Stick. And one of the things that you had mentioned is the theory about the death of the author. And
Hmm.
and at some point in time,
Not
the
the
author
literal death
says,
of Robert Jordan, by the
no,
way.
no, 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 not the literal death.
Yeah.
It what it means is there's an end to when the author writes something and says, aha, yes, this is what it means to me, and this is what I'm hoping that people get out of it. You can't, that ends at a certain point, and
Hmm.
it gets picked up by the readers, by the consumer, by the viewer, by the whoever. and they make their own interpretation of that. And there's nothing you can do to stop that.
Right.
So when I say I get passionate about things, I have to stop and say, okay, is this my interpretation just not lining up with someone else's interpretation? Or is this just a really bad story?
Right. Well, I mean, too, like, look at just like in general though, how many people have you met where you're just like, like I don't have anything in common with this guy. Like I don't want to
Yep.
have a conversation with this person. Like there's nothing here. Like
Yeah.
taste levels vary. Like things that you're into, I'm not into. What you think is cool, I think is like mid,
Yep.
like it
Yep.
just happens. Not everybody has the same point of view on things, and that's just the way of the world. But
Facts. Yeah.
it does feel like, from what I am seeing from the ratings of this show, it is pretty universally being loved by everyone. People who have read the book, people who have watched the previous adaptation of the book, because there was one from the 80s. Like everybody seems to be really enjoying it. And even people who have no, prior knowledge that this is actually an adaptation even. So that's a
By the way,
really good sign.
yeah, I agree. By the way, I did look it up. The book was published in 1975.
Okay.
It is called Shogun, and it was written by James Clavell. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's an ELL, so I feel like that's an L, Clavell.
So yeah, like the 70s, like who knows, maybe the people that were huge fans of this, they're not using the internet. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe at the time that was like their favorite series when it just came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, final thoughts on episode 2. Give it, just lay it down. What is how excited are you after episode 2 ends, moving forward into the next episode?
Yeah, let us know. Let us know your thoughts. If you agree with us, if you
Comment
disagree
below.
with us. Yeah, we made it. We had our first angry comment
Yeah,
last
we
week.
did.
So
I loved it. It was great. Hey, you know what? I love it. Be passionate. You
Death
will
of the
never
authors.
receive criticism or hate
Yes.
from us because you're passionate about something. Please just
Yes.
go off in the comments. Do
Go
it.
off.
This is a safe space. You can be as angry as you want.
Yeah, safe space for angry nerds.
All right,
You heard it
and
here first.
with that, one last reminder, Amber, go ahead and tell them where they can find you again, please.
Road to Tarvalin on YouTube. And I'm sure Josh will drop down a link in there somewhere. But yeah, like episode 1, we've already got that filmed. And by the time this comes out, you'll probably be seeing episode 3 shortly after. So yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for being here. We hope wherever you are, you leave here just a little bit more geeky than you were when you first got here. And from all of us at Two Geeks, One Mic, we say, stay geeky, my friends.
Stay geeky, my friends.